Hello and welcome to another episode of the Gold Country Media Sports Jam. I'm Jordan.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Matt.
And we're joined by a strange man over to Aaron's left over here. Why don't you introduce yourself, strange man?
I don't know. I just walked in.
This is good old Bill Poindexter, the managing editor of the Auburn Journal, also known as my boss.
I've covered a prep football game or two in my time.
Just a couple. But first things first, before we get into this show, I just want to ask, please raise your hand if you were a high school golfer in this group. Now please raise your hand if you also made the least amount of putts in our Gold Country Media putting competition today in this group. Technically that is not quite the case.
Least amount.
So
Do I have the least amount?
you might have had the least amount.
Oh, I missed that. No.
So we just want to get that out there. Do with that information what you will, everyone. That being said,
he made 6.
That being said, how was everyone's weekend?
It was good until that. I heard about that because I did the math wrong. But no, it was good. I went to cross country championships on Saturday. That was pretty fun all day. And then went to a Niners game yesterday, which fortunately my voice isn't more dead than it probably seemed, which is good. So, no, it was a great game. And, very fun weekend for sure.
Matt, how about you?
I was hanging with Aaron at Folsom High Saturday for the cross country. It was good times. And Sunday was my normal sit on the couch, watch the NFL, and write some stories.
All right. Well, Bill, we only have so much time, but I'd ask how your weekend was. But as both of us as Raider fans, I think we just have a therapy session in here.
Well, mine was lousy. I worked anyway. So.
All right, guys. Well, we had a big weekend of football on Friday night. Aaron, let's start with you. Kind of where were you at Friday night? Tell me a little bit about that game.
Yeah, so I was at Rockland Jesuit for what I really thought was going to be a really good contest. I thought it'd be a really close game, but Rockland, they've had one of their best, if not their best performance of the year out there. They just dominated, won 34-13. Rockland came into the game. The 4 seed Jesuit was the 5 seed in Division II. Of course, the Thunder play in the SFL, which is much more difficult than the Delta League. But the Marauders, they still had to go against Sheldon, Elk Grove, and beat Christian Brothers in the preseason. And Christian Brothers, as we'll get into a little bit, still in the section playoffs as well. But Jesuit, it just wasn't their night. The Thunder started with a 16-play, 73-yard drive that took 8 minutes and 14 seconds off the clock and resulted in instead of a touchdown. That was huge momentum for them going forward, tired out Jesuit's defense a little bit. Jesuit, on their first offensive drive of the game, they went for it on 4th down, the very first play of the second quarter. They went for it on 4th down inside their own 25-yard line, which was a very questionable call. I mean, had they gotten it, they would have been at least a 40, 50-yard play. I don't remember what receiver it was thrown to, but it was dropped. And so that was a huge missed opportunity for them. Rockland came back down and got a field goal out of it. So, Jesuit did their job in limiting them to 3 points. But, still, that's a huge swing right there. Jesuit's other 2 possessions in the first half resulted in a punt and an Eli Hardy interception from Rockland. The Thunders ended up scoring a touchdown on both offensive drives, 2 Elias Brown touchdowns to lead 24-0 at half. And at that point, it was pretty much all but over, knowing how well Rockland's defense has played all year. The Thunder got a field goal early in the third to make it 27-0. Jesuit did end up scoring a touchdown, got to 27-7, but then Silva put the game to bed with a 17-yard score. Jagger Shaddix had the last touchdown for Jesuit with 27 seconds remaining. Rockland's defense is legit. We've been talking about it a lot on the show recently. They're led by Derek Keeley. Their defensive line, Tom Sikinski, Spencer Patton, Cohen Bell, and John Correa, they've just been studs all season long. Those 4 linemen plus Keeley have just been amazing to watch. It'll be interesting to see if they can stop the duo of Bryson Davis and Nicholson at Manteca this next week.
No, Aaron, I have to ask, with Shaddix getting that last touchdown, would you call that almost Jesuit's last resort, if you will?
Oh, geez. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a fun stat. For anybody who doesn't get that reference, Jagger Shaddix is the son of Jacoby Shaddix, who is the lead singer of the band Papa Roach, which I'm pretty sure we're big fans of. And I was actually fortunate enough to meet Jacoby, so I doubt you're watching this. But Jacoby, if you are, you're as nice in person as you seem. You're great, and it was a pleasure getting to meet you.
Awesome. And yeah, that seems like one of those games that I think Rockland really made a statement with that win. Kind of, hey, rest of Division II, we're here, and the SFL came to play. And speaking of SFL teams, Matt, you were at another SFL game, and another SFL team that really made a statement. Talk about what you saw over at Oak Ridge.
Oak Ridge hosted the 3rd seed, hosted 6th seed Elk Grove. Last year, these 2 teams played a 1-point game. A lot of people expected this one to be close. It was not. Oak Ridge had a game plan. Two things Casey Taylor wanted to get done: get an early lead and get the passing game going, and they followed it to a T. First half passing, Maddox Varela threw for 227 yards. And second play of the game was a 62-yard touchdown pass from Varela to Caleb Edwards. So 7-0 early. Elk Grove punts in their first possession. Oak Ridge gets it back, drives down, and they have a 13-0 lead, just like that. So Oak Ridge followed their game plan to a T by getting the passing game going. And anyway, so Elk Grove scored their next possession to make it 13-7, but Oak Ridge kicked a field goal and then scored two more times before the half on touchdown passes to a touchdown run by Jake Hall and a touchdown pass to Guthmiller, and it was 30-7 at the half. So at that point, pretty much game over. Oak Ridge's defense, they gave up a lot of yards on the ground because that's all Elk Grove does is run the ball, but they only allowed the 7 points. The line, Marcus Hoffman, Cade Fair, Connor Dasman, solid all night long. Linebackers, Colin James, Gavin Malloy, Jake Hall, Caleb Evers, Nolan King, solid all night long. The run defense has been great all year, and that with the passing game has led them to the victory.
All right, and I mean, again, we're going to stick with the SFL. Bill, you're at another SFL team that had another big win. Kind of talk about what you saw at Del Oro Friday night, and I guess specifically the what Antelope saw. I think it was the back of a number 32 jersey for the most of the night.
I had an interesting discussion with Mike Maben, Del Oro's head coach, after the game, and that was a 46-26 Del Oro victory. They got out front 7-0. Antelope tied it, and Del Oro led 19-7 at the half. And Antelope, I didn't believe at that time really had a chance. I thought it was over at halftime. And it was because Kainoa Asia ran for 413 yards. And it was one of those games to where, and I've covered a couple games like this, it was one of those games to where in the fourth quarter, people on the sideline are coming up to the press and they're going, how many yards does he have? Because everyone started to know. Well, he total 413 on, I believe it was 34 carries. He had Del Oro's first 16 carries, and they kept going to him in the second half because Antelope began to score and come back and get back within 2 touchdowns. So they gave it to Kai again. And they ran behind that big line they had, and offensive coordinator Josh Perry, who knows a little something about scheming, added a couple of guys to the front to the offensive line. So they gave him at sometimes 7 blockers. So Kai had a lot of holes, and they thought they could take the edge, which is what Maben told me after the game. And Kai ran crazy. He had 10 runs of at least 20 yards. So what they're going to have to that's what they're going to have to figure out when they go into the semifinal this weekend. And I'm going to be going down. I'm getting back to Rothen now, but Del Oro, they took it all the way through. They're going to be tough. They're going to be tough in the semifinal this weekend. It's going to be a matter of how their opposition can scheme for them and what they can plan for. Because Caden Pinnock, their quarterback, threw 2 touchdown passes, but he completed, I don't have my stats in front of me, like 7 or 8 passes all night long. 2 were for touchdowns, both on broken plays, to where he used his athleticism and scrambled around until somebody broke open. And Antelope's coverage eventually broke down, and he found them wide open, and he had his 2 touchdown passes. So Del Oro is really going to be tough from here on out. They've gotten tougher as the season's gone on. I saw them opening week against Indercombe. I'll be honest, I told Jordan I was not that impressed with them. There were a lot of holes in their game, I thought. And, they plugged those holes, it's safe to say, because they look really, really good right now.
And I think that's what makes Del Oro so scary after looking at that game is seeing what they did to Antelope and then realizing that arguably their best player all season long, the SFL offensive MVP, wasn't really that much of a factor in that game. I mean, he had 2 touchdowns, but 8 completions. So it's like, okay, if they're putting up 46 points and your offensive MVP only completed 8 passes, I mean, what's going to happen when Asia and Pinnock have a night that they're gelling together and it works together? And I think that can be a very scary thing for Granite Bay. But before we get into that, I was also at a game Friday night of 2 former SFL teams in Placer and Wood Creek. Placer, the number 1 seed in Division III, coming in at 10-0, their 4th 10-0 season in the last, 10 years, I believe. Wood Creek coming in, they're 9-3, but they're 8-3 on the field because of a forfeit win. So I guess we'll say 8-3 is the 8th seed. Wood Creek coming off their first playoff win since 2008 and have never been to the semifinals. until now. Wood Creek ends up pulling out with the 26-21 victory. It was interesting. So the second play from scrimmage, Wood Creek actually fumbled the ball, and it felt like 7 yards forward. And it looked like Placer fell on it first, but then, there was a dog pile, a little scrum ensues. And somewhere in that scrum, Wood Creek comes up with the football. And, that's a backbreaker because, one, that's a 7-yard gain on a mistake. And then, all of a sudden, next play, Cooper Cairo goes in, 63-yard touchdown for his first of 4 on the night. Both teams traded scores for the entire first half. Pretty much, Placer goes up 21-19. The biggest swing in the game, though, Placer is up 21-19. Wood Creek seemingly does not have an answer for Placer's offense at this point. And Placer gets a stop, gets the ball with about a minute left around midfield in the first half. Placer ends up not being able to score on that drive. The Hillmen actually get the ball to start the second half. They don't score on that drive, and then Wood Creek gets the ball back, and Cairo goes in for another 63-yard touchdown. I mean, the swing that is, Placer could have made that game 35-19 before Wood Creek even got the ball back to start the third quarter. I mean, that swing right there is a huge one. Wood Creek played amazing defense in the second half. Both teams actually played amazing defense. I mean, neither team really deserved to lose this one. And then late in the second half, Placer is down to the 2-yard line. 4th and 2, they try a little trick halfback pass. The pass falls just a little bit short. Running back tried to throw it, but had a lot of pressure on him. And then Placer ends up forcing a 3-and-out, gets the ball back with 3 minutes left. They get inside the 12-yard line. It looks like the Hillmen are going to make another one of their famous late-game comebacks. And instead, there's a miscue on the toss. Wood Creek falls on it, and, hey, they're in the semifinals. And, props to Wood Creek. They played a great game, and I know a lot of people had them as the underdogs, but these guys don't feel like they're underdogs right now. And to be honest, I don't blame them. I mean, Wood Creek is a very, very good team. We've seen how well the CBC has performed in the playoffs. And, I mean, just a great performance by Wood Creek. Coach Brad Hunkins has done a great job there. He's actually going to be a guest on this episode a little later. Aaron and I are doing an interview with him. But just a great job in that program. And, when people think of football, you don't think of Wood Creek High School. But what this team has accomplished this year, the fact they're doing it with a lot of juniors, Wood Creek High School is a team that's going to need to be on your radar. And I know we had the impressive performance, like we said, with Cairo, with ASEA, with stuff like that. I want to shout out a couple other impressive performances. Anna Soares of Placer High School won the Division III Section Championship cross-country race. Jesse Redding of Colfax won the D4 Section Championship cross-country race. And McKenna Lechner of Forest Hill for winning the Division V Championship cross-country race. Aaron, kind of throwing it over to you. What were some of the most impressive performances you were aware of this week?
Yeah, so, of course, just starting off, running back duo over at Rockland, which I knew was going to be a thing to look for going into the game. Silva finished with 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. Elias Brown had 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. You mentioned Cooper Cairo, 201 yards and 4 touchdowns, and that huge win for Wood Creek at Placer. It just seems like Wood Creek gets a new guy every week that steps up for them. Last week it's Dylan Perral. Though, a few weeks prior it's Hakeem Anderson. This time it's Cooper Cairo. They've just got such a talented group of juniors in there that are just stepping up. Devel Barksdale for West Park. West Park defeated oh my God, I can't believe I
Nevada Union.
Nevada Union. Thank you so much for helping me out there. 48-28. Yes, they were up 48-7. And then Nevada Union came back a little bit. And so I'll talk a little bit about West Park in a little bit when I get to them. But he was 27 of 36 for 394 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. He was also named the FBL Player of the Year last week in the meeting. So congratulations to him. My South Placer Athlete of the Week, though, is actually going to be Ellie Bushnell of Granite Bay Girls Golf. She won the individual NorCal title with a 1 under par round of 71 last Monday at Berkeley Country Club. She is going to be playing on Wednesday at the state championship. So congratulations to her. Getting on to some other quick performances. I'll talk a little bit more about cross country in a sec, but I want to start with Katie Kopech. Whitney Cross Country. She's just been amazing all season long, committed to Oregon State. She won the D2 girls race by 29 seconds and had the best girls time of the day out of any race at 18:17. Getting into some Lincoln area stuff, my Lincoln area athlete of the week is actually going to be Hayden Dotson, the receiver over at Lincoln. Even though they lost 26-19 against Kimball, he had 2 touchdowns for them in the loss and really stepped up when they were stacking the box against Ryan Henning down there in Tracy. So congrats to Dotson. He was a transfer actually from Sutter coming into the year, and he's really stepped up for that Lincoln program. And finally, Nathan Crawford. 12 Bridges had a heartbreaking double overtime loss, 35-34 to Houston. Basically came down to one play. Houston got the 2-point conversion. But Crawford had a pick six in the game, and he had 3 rushing touchdowns. And he's been amazing for the Rhinos all season. They've got nothing but positivity ahead of them going forward for that program.
All right, Matt, over to you. What was some big performances you saw this week?
I'm starting with cross country. My athlete of the week is Folsom High senior Nathan Short. Won the Division I boys race at Willow Hills, time of 15:34.8. He was in third place with about 200 meters to go, and one runner went the wrong way, and he outkicked Ryan Mitchell from Davis to win the race by less than a second. So good finish for him. More cross country. Oak Ridge girls went 1-2 in the Division I race. Brooke Butler winning in 18:47.8, and freshman Adriana and Garagiola second in 18:52. And then the D2 race, Vista girls, Brenna Mannion, freshman, fourth place, 18:54.6. So they were the individual standouts. Back to football, Oak Ridge, Jake Hall, 82 yards rushing, 2 TDs. Sebastian Sutton, 6 catches, 92 yards in a TD. Caleb Edwards, 3 catches, 89 yards in a TD. Caden Koshik, 12 tackles to lead the defense. Over in the Folsom game, who breezed by Sheldon 52-8. Out from the JV, Folsom pulled up 20 guys from the JV team. Damian Rivera, 5 carries, 72 yards, and a touchdown, including the touchdown at 61 yards out, led the team in rushing, and that was in the fourth quarter. Donovan Maxi Parler, 2 TD runs, 57 yards. Rico Flores, 5 catches, 65 yards in a TD. And Greco Carrillo, block punt, and returned it 40 yards for a TD.
I wanted to ask you real quick. You said that one of the cross country runners ran off the course. Are you? Because that happened in a couple of races that I was covering too. Are you talking like right at the very end they ran towards the start line instead of running towards the finish? Yeah. I don't know what's up. I feel like going forward they need to mark that a little better because there was a few runners that thought for some reason that that's the end. And I know when I ran in that race when I was in high school, there were a couple people that did the same thing. It seems to be an issue every year there.
Yeah. And also, can I just get confirmation on the name? Did you say Greco?
Carrillo.
Greco Carrillo. That has to be up there. We're going to start the list of the best names we've had. Greco Carrillo might be up there. I know Colfax had an Amadeus Alcala. That might be one of my favorites as well. But Greco Carrillo, a great one. Bill, I know we had Kaya Sia, but were there any other performances really stood out to you at that Del Oro game?
Well, their secondary, I could point out a few names, but their defense overall, and I've seen them 3 times this season, their defense every time has just been absolutely on fire. They have a really good pass rush. They really get to the quarterback quick. They fill gaps. You can't run on them. They beat Granite Bay, worth noting since they're playing again this weekend. They beat Granite Bay on September 30th, 21-10. And in that game, Granite Bay did not crack 200 yards. Del Oro didn't have the best night either. Worth noting again that ASIA had 61 yards and 30 carries in that game. No, I'm sorry, 20 carries. So he averaged 3 carries. So Granite Bay had his number that night. Antelope obviously did not. So that's going to be another good matchup. Looking ahead to this weekend, what's Josh Perry going to come up with this time to go against the Granite Bay defense? But Granite Bay secondary, Thomas Graham, Jake Hamilton, who, as I wrote in my story, was competing for quarterback early in the season. Now he's a kick returner receiver, and he's a quarterback. And he actually outdueled an Antelope receiver, talented group of receivers at Antelope. He outdueled an Antelope receiver for a ball on the sideline that he ended up with, but they were out of bounds. So he did not get the pick there, but he won that battle. He knocked down a couple of other balls. Robert Garcia had a good night on defense. Their secondary overall was just really, really good. And Antelope, as I again wrote in my story, they went bombs away. They just went, if it was 3rd and 4 from the 30 or 4th and 8 from the 40, they went bombs away and went for the end zone to see if their athletes could outjump and win battles with the secondary for Del Oro and see if they could win those battles. And they did not. Del Oro had 1 interception. They had a sack. They had a lot of pressures. And overall, their defense was just, rather than name 1 or 2 guys, the whole unit was really, really good.
Yeah, I think that's going to be, a big factor when we get into the matchups coming up. One more thing, though, before we get into where we're each going to be on Friday night, just a shout out to some of the other sports in the area. Forest Lake Christian School, the girls volleyball team is playing for the D6 NorCal title on Tuesday against Fall River up in MacArthur. The Falcons haven't dropped a set since September 24th. They're on a 42-set winning streak right now. They won their first section title since 1998 this year. They've never won a NorCal title, and they've lost to Fall River the last 2 years. But, I mean, this year they won a section title after losing the previous 3 section titles. 2018, I believe, they lost to Fall River in the NorCal title. 2019, they lost to Fall River 2019, they lost to Fall River in the NorCal title. 2021, they lost to Fall River in the semifinals. So, I mean, they already got over one hump. Now they're going up there again for a 3rd straight year. We'll see if they can end up coming up with a NorCal title, first one in program history. Bear River girls volleyball fell to Skyline over in Oakland 3-0 in the NorCal quarterfinals. They did pick up a home win with a young team, though. That's a huge one for that program. Congrats to them. And to Colfax girls cross country, who won the D4 section title. Placer High School took second in Division III. Congrats to both of you guys. And I believe Julian Doak at Placer High School qualified for the state cross country meet as an individual. Aaron, thrown over to you. I know you had a big week, not only on the cross country course, but underwater, I guess we can say.
Yeah.
Talk about some of those championships.
Yeah, so I think from the Wednesday before last, so it was like 10 days ago, till like last Wednesday, I covered like 6 or 7 water polo games in that stretch, so it definitely kept me busy. I actually want to start with volleyball real quick, and then I'll get into water polo and everything else. Whitney won their first NorCal game, and then they lost their second to Marin Catholic on Thursday. Del Oro won its first game at home against Carondelet, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. And then they lost their second to Oregon. Lincoln lost to Archie Williams. They had to travel to the number 1 seed in the Bay Area. They got killed 3-0 last Tuesday. Water polo, Granite Bay girls lost 13-7 to Davis in the section championship. The Del Oro boys beat Wood Creek 13-11. That's their first section title in school history for that program. And then the Wood Creek girls beat Buhat Colony 14-5, which is the first water polo section title for either team, the boys or the girls, in school history. So big congrats to Del Oro and Wood Creek there. Get into a little bit of tennis. Rockland beat Granite Bay 7-2 to win their second straight section title and their 5th in history. They will be in the NorCals on Friday. I believe that's being played in Folsom. Del Oro beat Wood Creek 7-2 in the D2 championship, and then Oakmont lost 5-4 to Bandon in D3. I believe all 3 of those matchups, at least D2 and D3, were played at Johnson Ranch in Granite Bay. But cross country, I was there, pretty much all day on Saturday. Saw a lot of great performances. Jaden Trujillo of Lincoln, 15th in the D3 boys race, narrowly missed a state cut. Jackson Geiselman for 12 Bridges in the D4 boys race was 12th, and he missed the state by less than 8 seconds. And he gave it his all because he collapsed at the end. And there was a lot of runners you could tell that gave it their all on Saturday because they were just collapsed at the end. They were just spent. But so congrats to him. He's only a sophomore. He's got a great future ahead of him. Whitney boys and girls both won the D2 team titles and will be headed to state along with Granite Bay girls, who were second in the D2 girls race. That was actually only 3 teams from each race for varsity made it on to state. But for the D2 girls race, since they had 3 teams that were ranked in the top 10 in the state, they allowed 4 teams to qualify. And I believe Vista made it on, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So congrats to all of them. Western Sierra Collegiate Academy, their varsity boys missed qualifying for state by only 2 points as a team behind Vacaville Christian, but Graham Martin and Ryan True both made it. They are the first Western Sierra Wolves athletes to make it to state since Sarah Sabra in 2019. Mikkel Jobson, a sophomore at John Adams Academy in Roseville, finished 3rd in the D5 girls race to qualify for state. For Del Oro, Angeline Gutierrez and Charlotte Wood will both be running at state in the D3 girls race after coming 4th and 10th respectively on Saturday. And then finally for Rockland, Devin Pereira, senior, came in at 16 minutes flat, 7th place. Will make it back to state for the 2nd year in a row, while true freshman Allie Harmon finished 9th and grabbed a state qualifying spot. So huge congrats to all of them.
Awesome. And, there is one more I forgot to mention, too. Placer Tennis won the D4 girls tennis section title. Congrats to them. Matt, throwing over to you. What were some big team performances you saw?
Yeah, Oak Ridge volleyball, girls volleyball, thrown in the open division. They didn't want to be there, but that's where they were placed. So they won their first match against Foothill Pleasanton last week, and then this past Saturday had to go to San Jose to play Archbishop Mitty, and lost to that powerhouse the last year's Open state runner-up in 3 straight games. So still a great season for Oak Ridge. And then the cross country, Oak Ridge girls won their 3rd straight D1 section title. We're scoring 28 points maybe. That's the school record. they had 4 girls finish in the top 7, so that's domination right there. And then Vista boys and girls, they each got the last qualifying spot in D2 to state meet, and always a great job by Robert Grove and his runners there.
All right, and Bill, I guess I'd ask you, but as managing editor of Auburn Journal, I guess my notable sports team stories are the same as your notable sports team stories with the same paper. So we're going to move on now to where we're all going to be Friday night. I know we've got a lot of big ones. We're down to the semifinals now. There are no bad games, really. Aaron, let's start with you. You've got the small school left in the area. Can I talk about where you're going to be Friday night and what you expect from that game?
Yep, first-year seniors, West Park. They are in the section semis for Division 4. They're going to be taking on Capital Christian, who ended up outlasting Casa Roble 42-35. I did not expect that. I thought Casa was going to come away with the win, but it's going to be West Park at home against Capital Christian. Capital Christian, they weren't allowed to compete in the postseason last year, and they're a hungry team that's ready to go after a section title. At the same time, the Panthers showed how scary they can be with their first half performance alone offensively against Nevada Union. Weston Wade showed how impactful he can be, as despite only having 39 yards on the ground, he had 3 touchdowns. Ryan Sisson had 2 touchdowns, and Julian Niualala had a touchdown. I mentioned Barksdale earlier. Of course, he had a phenomenal game too. On the flip side, the Cougars are led by their junior quarterback, Eddie Brusuelas, who had 336 yards and 5 touchdowns on Friday. This is going to be a shootout. I don't expect it. I mean, there's obviously both teams have a solid defense, but I think this is going to be a shootout. We're going to see a game that's going to be in the high 30s, low 40s. I'm going to say that I don't think you want to be in a shootout against West Park. They've proven all year that they are a team that will score points in a hurry. I'm going to roll with the Panthers, 43-37, making it to the section championship as their first year as seniors.
All right, I like it. And Matt, you've got another big one over in Division 1. I guess you probably have the biggest school left. So talk about what you're expecting out of that one.
Yeah, well, 5th seed Central Catholic goes to top seed Folsom for a matchup between an 8-4 team and a 10-1 team. But both teams losing. They have 2 common opponents. Both lost to Sarah San Mateo, and they both beat Monterey Trail. So, the point there. But Central Catholic's other losses were they're 2 very good, very strong teams: St. Francis, St. Mary's, and St. John Bosco. So, 4 losses, but they're four of the better teams around in the state. Central Catholic has won many section titles over the past 15 years from Division 4 up. So they've got a history of a strong history of winning. So, again, I'm a Folsom guy. I think Folsom will win the game, but it's a formidable foe for sure.
Definitely, I think that's one too where Central Catholic has really risen to power and sustained that power in recent years. But Folsom's just a whole different beast. And Bill, throwing it over to you, you're going to be making the longest journey out of any of us. You're traveling down to the 209. What are you expecting out of Rockland and Manteca?
I am, but before I go to the 209, I got something I want to add to what you guys were saying earlier. Placer Tennis wins section championship. On that team was Ava Doak, who you wrote about.
Yep.
Had a big victory in singles, and she is currently starring as the Tooth Fairy in Placer High School's fall production of Elsewhere, which is a current play about teenagers, and teenagers are playing the roles of teenagers.
Well, we got to be careful because otherwise there might be Sac Joaquin sanctions of magic being used to win. If you're the Tooth Fairy and you're winning section championships while doing it. But
Well, I checked with the bylaws, and I do understand that Tooth Fairies are not allowed to play tennis.
well, I mean, unless they're transfers. Then,
And she also has an army of goblins with her, so I don't think I'm going to mess with young Miss Ava Doak. But if you get a chance to go see Elsewhere, Placer High School this Friday and Saturday night.
and I believe her brother is actually Julian Doak, who qualified for the state meet as an individual for cross country. So
That is good Doak family knowledge.
that is great
Absolutely.
family knowledge.
And Carondelet is located across the street from De La Salle High School.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And you
Gotcha.
did pronounce it right, Aaron.
All right. Good to know.
Absolutely. Now, about this meaningless Manteca Rockland game, what do you got?
I mean, just
Most important thing is that it's going to be played at Gushmead Field in Manteca, where I performed a lot of halftime shows in high school as part of the East Junior Marching Band. That's what it's most known for. Aside from that, Manteca is a formidable opponent that has really grown over the years. This year, I'm going to read you a couple of their scores. Vista Del Lago, a fine program, 44-6 win. Patterson, who is getting ready to play Grant this weekend in Division III,
Yep.
a semifinal. Okay, 43-10. Turlock, 59-22 victory. Turlock beat Rockland opening week, 14-7.
Just beat St. Mary's.
It just beat St. Mary's in overtime in the playoffs. They defeated Kimball 55-19, which is in the D4 semifinals. And last weekend they rolled up Vacaville 42-0. Manteca is strong on both sides of the ball. Their defense coordinator is Rick James, who I coached when he was a Babe Ruth baseball player, and he went on to do great things at East Union. Also, he's been at Manteca for several years, and they have a dominating defense. They have two guys to really keep an eye on. Blake Nicholson is on his way to Florida State, and this season I know Jordan's happy about that. This season, 1,826 total yards, 1,158 on the ground with 20 touchdowns, and they've given him more of a receiving role this year. He has 549 yards receiving and another 12 touchdowns. The kid scored 32 touchdowns this season. And last year, bigger numbers rushing the ball, but this year they have a young junior named Bryson Davis. Bryson Davis had a big weekend last week against Vacaville. He's approaching 1,000 yards on the ground, and he scored 15 touchdowns. So that's what Rockland and that fine defense is going to have to deal with when they prepare for Manteca. Again, Manteca strong on both sides of the ball. It's a fun venue to play at. And again, it's not Gushmead Field. You have to say venerable Gushmead Field. That's how long it's been around. And if you want to know how to get there, Gus is spelled with 2 S's. Okay? So that's most important. Rockland, I'm going to have a fun time traveling to this game and watching this game because I do believe Rockland's going to give them a go. I want to see their defense, another strong defense, a big game against Granite Bay. They lost to Turlock 14-7. Turlock with a big offense. They also lost to Folsom 14-7 late in the season, regular season finale, if I'm not mistaken. So Rockland can play defense. They're strong. I believe that their forte on offense is going to be that running back duo of Elias Brown and Mason Silva. Both of them are big backs. Both of them over 200 pounds. They're punishers. They like to go up the middle. One thing that I am going to like to see out of this game are the little end games that Coach Jason Adams talked about when I covered their game against Granite Bay. He said, everyone sees the pass, rush, try to score, and stop the other team. But there are the end games within the game that Adams talked about that, okay, these guys just moved another hat over here. So we got to respond to that. And you adjust to their adjustments, and they adjust to your adjustments. And Manteca is big at that. Real good coaching staff, smart, talented players. And Coach Adams seems like he enjoys those end games. I believe he enjoys that stuff, and that's good. And I think for that reason, I believe it'll be a pretty good game. One of Manteca's toughest to date, but they are just so explosive, and they have so many weapons. I can't go against Manteca in this game. They're that strong.
So one thing I will say, Manteca is in D2 right now because they won the D3 title last year. I actually announced the Lincoln Manteca game, which ended Lincoln's season last year. I think this Manteca team is better than last year's Manteca team. But what I will say is I think that there's a different way. I think there's a different level of experience when you have a team that's up from D3 now playing in D2 versus a team that was in D1 playing now down at the D2 level and it's in a D1 league playing. Folsom and Oak Ridge are in D1, of course. Granite Bay and Del Oro are in D2. But when you're playing against opponents like that in the SFL and you have to be matched up with them every week and you're putting up fights against teams like Folsom, I think it's different in all due respect to Manteca than a Manteca team that's playing against teams like Kimball or playing against teams like Vacaville. No disrespect to those teams, they're all good. But I think, when I talk about, on the show a lot about how well Rockland's defense is, it's because of the fact that they're playing against some of the best offensive teams in the Sac-Joaquin section. And because of that being the case, I think with the experience they have, I think with how senior-led they are, with how much experience they have in coaching, I'm personally going to roll with the Thunder 24-20 based off of the experience alone. I do agree. I think if you look at the talent of both teams, I think Manteca has bigger stars that have done more for their teams than Rockland probably has. But based off the experience alone, I'm going to roll with the Thunder. But in my opinion, that is the game of the week. I think that is going to be probably the best game out of any area. I think that's going to be it's going to come down to the wire and it's going to be a good one. I'm going to go Rockland 24-20.
All right, I like it. And, we got another great one. And if Rockland does pull that off, we will have an all-SFL Division II championship because Delaware Granite Bay is the other semifinal, and that's where I'm going to be. I know back in September, I called it, possibly biased as a Del Oro grad, of the best rivalry in the area, if not one of the best rivalries in the area, if not the best. Del Oro won this one 21-10 back on September 30th, like Bill said. It was a great defensive battle, especially in the second half, and both teams pitched shutout in the second half. Del Oro has really, I mean, they made a statement with that win over Antelope, like we talked about earlier, how they did it with the running back, and possibly the best player on that offense wasn't even a factor really as much in that. But Granite Bay is a team that's really found its stride lately too. In the last 3 games, I think it's a 49-7 win. I'm trying to remember what they did over Indercombe. I think it was a pretty hefty win there. And then 42-24 over 10-0 Downey. So Granite Bay is a team that has really found itself, obviously led by Carter Jackson over in the backfield, the sophomore in that. I just think in this one, though, Granite Bay is a very good team. I think this game is going to be a lot closer than the first meeting is. That being said, we've talked about it, how hard of a place it is to go into and win when you're going into Loomis on a Friday night. The other thing, too, Granite Bay, as good as they are, they are a team that is made up of a lot of juniors and a lot of sophomores, whereas Del Oro has a lot of senior talent that's been contributing. I just can't go against that experience in this one. So I'm going to say Del Oro is going to win. I'll say 24-21. I think this one's going to go down to the wire. And, we have a potential possibility for SFL championships in Division I and Division II, because we could easily see Folsom Oak Ridge and see Del Oro Rockland or Granite Bay Rockland in next weekend's games.
And one thing I wanted to add about the Granite Bay is, you mentioned a lot of juniors and sophomores. They have a freshman too, Isaiah Ene, who's already being looked at a number of colleges, who's a two-way player. He had an interception and a touchdown last week against Downey in the 42-24 win. He's been a stud. He's been overlooked, I think, a little bit because of what Carter Jackson's been able to do for that offense. But don't count him out on both sides of the ball. Ene is a talent. He is able to pick up his speed super quick. And, if they're able to get their backs going, it's going to be a long night for Del Oro. But I think I'm with you. I probably am going to roll with Del Oro 27-24. But I would not be surprised in the slightest if Granite Bay is able to pull off an upset.
I wouldn't either. I don't even know if you could call it an upset when SFL teams play. I think at that point it's just like, well, it was a coin toss and it landed on tails instead of heads. That league is just so stacked. Before we get going, does anyone else have anything we want to add?
The only thing I wanted to add is, for anybody who's not just watched the show, but has also been, a reader of everything that we've been putting online, obviously we appreciate you guys, but, we wouldn't have been able to, have as much content for you guys when it comes to the football side of things with just me and him and Matt. Wanted to give a big thank you to this guy over here, Bill Poindexter, who's been doing a game pretty much every week for us and in both of our coverage areas, and it's been amazing. Also, if you're watching Jim Linzow, he's also been a huge contributor for us every week as well. We really just love being able to cover all these games, and looking forward to what these last couple of weeks have in store for us.
Yeah, hey, it's a good problem to have. Everyone we cover keeps on winning, so I'd rather be busy than be scrambling to fill the paper. So nice job, everyone. That's going to do it for this week's episode of the Gold Country Media Sports Jam. I'm Jordan.
I'm Aaron.
Matt. And Bill.
It's the jam this week.
Yeah. All right. All right, now we welcome on Wood Creek football head coach Brad Hunkins, probably the man of the hour right now in the area after what his team did Friday night. Brad, how are you? Thank you for joining the show.
I'm doing great, Jordan. Thanks for having me on.
So we kind of just wanted to start first by just getting your thoughts, on that game. What your defense did in the second half against that Placer team was incredible. And I think the last 4 minutes especially was a true definition of, bend but don't break. You make that goal line stand, then you get the turnover there. Kind of just talk about the defensive stand that you guys made at the end of those 2 stands, I guess, at the end of the game.
Well, I talked about it after Friday night to you. It was just like there was the bright lights and kind of a big event for our kids of never being there. And then we went in halftime and we got them kind of calm, cool, and collected. And we said, look, just line up, play your position, play your technique. We talked about all week, and things will work out for us. And they did. Our kids were in the right spot, and they were able to, not give up the big runs that we saw early in the game and that we saw, all year from Placer. They're a really good football team. Coach Montoya and that staff, what they've done over the last decade up there has been amazing. And for us to kind of hold our own and dig in on the goal line, I was really proud of our defense for doing that for us, because it's a cliche, right? Offense wins games, but defense will win you championships. And our defense definitely has stepped up when we've needed them. Roseville and Yuba City and in the Placer game for certain. And then obviously Golden Valley pitching a shutout. That they've done a really good job.
And, I have to ask, after you guys made that goal line stand against Placer, you get the ball back, I think it like your own 2-yard line, and you end up with a 4th and inches or a 4th and 1 at your own 11. You guys lined up to go for it, and there was a false start on the first hard count. I have to ask, were you going to snap that ball and go for it, or were you just trying to draw them off sides?
We were going to go for it.
Okay, because I felt like a first down there wins that game. Placer had no timeouts left, and I was like, it's a gutsy move, but with the way you guys were running the ball, I was telling someone on the sideline you guys should go for it. So had to ask to get the clarification there. And then the other thing I want to ask is, I said after Placer's win against Vista Del Lago, when they had a few comeback wins, and Vista being the team that had their number last year, the confidence Placer had after that game was they felt like they could go take the field with Folsom and they would feel like they could beat them. I'm not saying they would. I'm saying that's what their confidence level is at. And I found a little bit of that in your guys' team after that game on Friday night, where after going on the road and knocking off the 1 seed, and the undefeated team, a team that everyone pretty much had in the section championship, you guys really have this swagger and confidence about you where it looks like these guys really feel like they can go out there and beat anybody. As a coach, what do you kind of do with that? Is there a way that you kind of reel that in a little bit and say, hey, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We still have a job to do. Or do you kind of thrive off that and be like, hey, you guys are confident right now. Let's go take this thing.
Yeah, there's a balance between being arrogant and confident. And for our kids, the one thing that we've tried to really hit on is that, respect your opponent and be wary of what they can do. But, what you did last week, especially right now in the postseason, doesn't matter. And not to knock our kids played an amazing game. Our team did a really good job in prep all week, and that goes from scout all the way down to the starters. But we came in here on Monday and we watched film and we told them the things we needed to fix, and we presented the new issue, which is Christian Brothers and the things that they can do that cause us the same headaches that Placer can cause us. So for us, we want our kids to know that we're proud of them and we're very happy with where we're at. But at the same time, that's in the past, and we just want to keep moving forward.
All right, I like it. And Aaron, I know you've got a few, especially as we said, moving forward and looking into that Christian Brothers game.
Yeah, I first thing wanted to just talk about, just your guys' team in general. You guys have a relatively young team. You've got a lot of juniors. Looking at guys like Catapotis, looking at guys like Dylan Peralt, looking at guys like Hakeem Anderson, Cooper Cairo, who had just a huge game, over 200 yards rushing, Joey Nielsen. The list goes on. Tell me, just how have you been able to get this group of young guys to step up in the way they have these last few weeks to make this run looking like they are an experienced group of seniors when there's a lot of juniors out there?
Well, a lot of those kids as juniors were playing varsity football last year. Dylan Peralt, Hakeem Anderson, Brady Spencer played varsity in the COVID year as a freshman, and then again this last year. So he's played 2 years of varsity football. Keegan McDaniel, who's playing on defense. A lot of those kids in that junior class, by moving those kids up as sophomores, a lot of those other kids got the experience that they needed in terms of starting at the JV level to help them succeed or have the ability to succeed this year. And, it's a tight knit group. They're a good group of kids. We're very fortunate to have, a kind of a run of kids together that are definitely bought in, and they're Wood Creek through and through. And so that's really nice because they see that they can be successful, and now they're starting to, actually feel those rewards with that. But, a guy like Austin, who basically only played 5 games prior to playing varsity football, he broke his collarbone. He got hurt during the COVID spring. For him to come in, he's starting to find his comfort in the driver's seat. If you ever watch a game, him and I are, for the first 10 seconds when he comes over and we're talking about the next play, it's almost like we're having a debate and we're saying this and this and that. Okay, let's try this, or let's do this instead. And so he does a good job of understanding how everything works, and that intelligence pays off for me as a coach because it makes me look really good, but it makes my play calling really easy. So those kids have just kind of accepted that as they've come in. They've understood the standard. My lower level programs, my coaches from like Stan Gerhardt, Malcolm Thomas, who's an alum of our program, they have done a really good job of just piecemealing or giving the kids a little bit each year and building upon that. And that's something that when I came here at least 8 years ago, but especially when I took over 4 years ago, that was not happening. And now that you're starting to see the kids' knowledge of a program pay off. And, I don't want to say we're, Nevada Union-esque, but you look at the old Nevada Union teams, I mean, they got better as they went through the programs. Monterey Trail gets better as they go through the programs and up through the levels. And that's kind of, we're trying to emulate that. Placer's another example of that. I mean, they get better as they move up. And that helps our kids have the confidence to go out on the field versus a number 1 seed or versus a 9 seed and say, we're going to take care of business. We're going to give it our best effort.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit before the season, but Wood Creek football has not seen a ton of success. Only 3 winning seasons since 2004. But these last 2 have been kind of special, and you guys are currently 9-3 this season, going into the section semis in Division III. What kind of legacy do you think you guys are leaving right now for just the future of Wood Creek football?
Well, our kids, every year we talk about goal setting and what we're going to do with our program. What's kind of the end result? How are we going to measure our success? And it'd be easy to say it's wins and losses. And Keegan McDaniel, who is one of our junior inside linebackers, and it really started with Nikolai Nielsen when he was a junior coming off of his sophomore year where he played varsity football for us, is they all wanted to leave the program in a better place. And Keegan's line this year was to brand it as a program that needed to be reckoned with, a program that needed to be respected when it came on the field. And so I asked them those questions. What do we need to do? And they said, we need to execute well. We need to play with confidence, and we need to be physical. And that's one thing that I take a lot of pride in is our kids do not shy away from contact. And, that's easy. I mean, it's easy for a coach to say that, but, we talked about the new weight room I'm sitting in right now. I mean, that weight room and the weight room, it expands onto the field by doing everything we do in here twice a week during the season and 4 days a week in the off season. Allows us to get those double teams and drive people off the ball. I mean, and Placer had a good line. I mean, those 4 guys up front were stout. Their middle linebacker was a really good football player, and we were able to hold our own. I mean, they got theirs, but Cooper Cairo ran for 201 yards, so he was able to punch through because our line was blocking for him.
Yeah, and I know that that weight room thing. I mean, it's a huge testament if a school has a good program. I know, like up at Colfax, 2 guys you're familiar with, Kyle and Jason Stowers. I mean, they've implemented their weight program there, and small schools don't have that, and I think establishing that at any school is a huge thing.
Yeah, it's huge. It makes a difference in those close games. If you've been squatting and cleaning and doing bench press for 15, 16 weeks during the season, and then your whole off-season program, yeah, it makes a huge difference when it comes down to those games, like a game last week versus Placer, and one that we have coming up next week.
And I wanted to get into this week's game that you guys have, against Christian Brothers. Christian Brothers is a team, they do run the ball, of course, a fair amount, but they've seen a lot of success with their quarterback, William Littlejohn, connecting with their sophomore, Philip Bell. They have quite a few young guys as well in their program who've been playing well. What do you guys need to do this week to just prevent them from going over the top and making big plays in the air and gaining momentum?
Well, we definitely have to contain their athletes. Their running back, quarterback, and receiver combination are 3 pretty dangerous kids, and they've got a good size line. I would say that size-wise across the board, they're bigger than what Placer was, but Placer is definitely a physical football team. We just have to contain their athletes and keep everything in front of us. If it's that bend but don't break mentality, because we want to make them drive the length of the field, not get a 30 to 40 yard pop over the top to their, very good wide receiver. I mean, Philip is a really good receiver. I mean, he deserves all the credit he's getting right now. And then with their quarterback, and he is a guy I wouldn't mind having in our offense as well. He runs well, and then their back definitely he can get to the edge and run to the perimeter. And so, they're a section semifinal team. And for us, it's, doing the same things we've talked about all year, is just keeping their athletes in front of us, making tackles, being sure in what we're doing, and, preventing the big play so we can keep the wind out of their sails.
Well, best of luck to you guys this week. I know that's a huge game coming up, and the winner of your game will take on the winner of Grant and Patterson in the section championship. So huge things going forward. Thank you once for coming on, Coach. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate your guys' time and your coverage of our kids. Really, you guys do a great job, and our kids are really appreciative of it, and their families are as well. So keep it up.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.